began as an ordinary day. Shopping for school uniforms. Out with his mother and his brother as they went to look. Jordan, 13 years old, his mother and brother were in a car when the water around them started to rise. It was up to the tires, and then it was up to the doors, and then the engine stalled. They called emergency services, and they said, "Stay where you are, we'll come get you." And they were on their way. Others had stopped and were at the water's edge, kind of watching all this unfold, but the water was a little too rough for them to make it out to Jordan and his family. One man attempted and then was pushed back by the waters. Another man, Warren, tied a rope around his waist and ventured back out again. He was knocked down several times, but he eventually made it to the car. And he was going to grab Jordan and carry him back, and Jordan said, "No, take my brother first." And so he did. He grabbed his brother, Blake, and Warren picked him through the window and started back for the water's edge. The water kept rising, and Jordan and his mother were forced to climb out of the car and on top of the roof. Rescuers didn't make it back to them. The car was overturned, and Jordan was swept off the roof, and his mother reached for him, and they both went down river. Jordan Rice was 13 years old. He was terrified of the water, and he couldn't swim. But he sacrificed himself so that his brother might live. I was thinking of this story and then thinking of this weekend. Jesus in the garden. The passage that we had read for us. As he struggled there with what to do. And his prayer is, "Father, not my will, but your will be done." Jesus didn't want to die. Jesus didn't want to sacrifice himself, and yet, for your sake, for my sake, for our sake, for the world's sake, he did. That we might live. Jesus gave himself. He sacrificed himself for us. The last couple weeks we've been talking about money and finances and wealth and possessions and just stuff. But when we started this series, we talked about it's really more than stuff. It's about choice and what we do with it. In the first week we began with, "I choose God." Are we going to love God more than we love our things, more than we love our wealth, more than we love even our families, our health, the things that we really, I guess, value? Because that's what God calls for from us. To give up our very selves to follow him. Jesus in the garden was a struggle of wills. Whose will will Jesus follow? Whose will, whose purpose, whose plan will he give himself over to? He wanted to follow his own will. If anything can be done, if you can take this cup away from me, please remove it. Because I really don't want to do what you're asking me to do. But not my will, but your will be done. Ultimately, he made the sacrifice. He made the decision to follow God's will over his own. We have so many idols in life, so many things calling for our attention, so many things wanting us to follow, to obey. We talked about mammon. Mammon is an idol. You can't serve two masters. You need to pick one. God or mammon. And I think security is an idol for us. That we'd like to be safe and know that we're going to be safe. And I'll talk about Jesus and I'll share my faith with someone else as long as it doesn't cost me anything. And as long as there's not a risk associated with it. As long as it's not too uncomfortable. But we need to choose. Who are we going to serve? Are we going to serve God, or are we going to serve ourselves? This Easter weekend, we look at Jesus struggling in the garden. He gave himself up for us. Jordan Rice in the car as the waters rose gave himself up for his brother. He may not realize at the time that that's the sacrifice that he was making. He might have thought, the guy's going to make it back in time to get me too. But he knew there was some risk involved. Because he says, no, take my brother first. If there's no risk, then what did the order matter? But he knows there's something potentially bad here. He gave himself up so that his brother might live. Several months ago, we watched the Francis Chan videos, The Forgotten God. And he gave an illustration in one of those sessions. I don't remember which one it was. He talked about going on a trip, a ski vacation, and on the way there got a speeding ticket. And they were going through Vegas on the way, so they stopped at the casino. He had $8 left, and he thought, I'm going to win back some of this money to pay for the speeding ticket. And he put the whole $8 down in front of him at the blackjack table. And he won. It wasn't that big a deal. It was $8. You know, it was all he had, but it was just $8. And then he was at $16. And so he bet it all again. And he won. And he's at $32. And he won. And he's at $64. And he won. So at $128, his hands started to shake, and his palms were sweaty, and he's still betting everything he had, but for some reason there's more involved there, right? Because $8 wasn't a big deal. But now $128 is a big deal. And he lost. But the point of the illustration is that it becomes more and more difficult to go all in as the stakes go up. it becomes more and more difficult in our lives to go all in as the stakes go up. The more heavily invested we are in this world and in this life, and the things that we have here, and the things that we want to accomplish here, and the things that we want to do here, the more difficult it becomes for us to gamble everything, to go all in with God, and risk everything for what He's offering us. We lose sight of what we're actually gaining when we risk everything with God. Jesus said, he who wants to save his life will lose it. But the one who wants to lose his life, or is willing to lose his life, will gain not only this life, but life to come and all the blessings that go with it. It's not really a risk on our part to go all in with God, and yet we're hesitant to do it because we perceive so much to lose here. We don't want to risk everything because we're afraid to give up what we have. Giving frees us. Giving is what allows us to hold loosely the things of this life and of this earth. Sometimes we talk about giving like the offering. And that's a part of it. But today I want us to think about sacrificial giving. That is more than just, I'll give God this check, or this $20 bill, or this $1 bill. I'll just give God kind of what's left over after I've been taken care of and all my needs have been met. As long as I make sure that I've done enough to get me through to the end of the month, then I'll give to God out of that, if there's anything left. I'll give to God after my 401k is maxed out and after everything has been taken care of. As long as I feel safe and secure, then I can give to God. That's not what Jesus did. In giving to God, it cost him everything. That's not what Jordan Rice did. And his wasn't necessarily a gift to God, but to his brother. And it cost him everything. When we give sacrificially, we give of ourselves, not just of our pocketbooks. When we give sacrificially, we let go of the things that are holding us here, the things that are demanding our attention and want us to live the way that we want to live. We give those things over to God because they're not really ours to start with. And we allow Him to have what is rightfully His. I think of the passage in Philippians 2 of Jesus giving Himself. It says He humbled Himself. And He became one of us, which was a humbling. He became a servant, which was humbling. He submitted Himself to death on a cross. And in all this, God then raised Him up to new life. God calls us to live lives of sacrifice, giving for the benefit of others. And the rewards on the other side of that are incredible. They're tremendous. And yet we want to hold on to our little trinkets here and now because we're afraid to embrace what will come. Here's your assignment for the week. I want you to make a treasure list. I want you to list all the things that are valuable to you. I want you to give something away. Be sacrificial in your giving. Now, maybe you're not there yet. We're all at different levels, and we're all in different places in our world. If you're not there yet, then go ahead and make up your list. And then confess your inability to God. Confess that inability to let go. And ask for God's help. That you can be a sacrificial giver also. And you're thinking, well, what if my kids are on the list? What if it's my health or my future, or what if it's those things that are on the list? Well, some of those things might be what you need to let go of. But as parents, we like to control. We call it guidance. But sometimes we try to live our lives through our children. We want to see them succeed, and we want to see them thrive in ways that maybe we didn't. We want to have our success through them. And so maybe for you, part of that letting go is allowing them to live their own lives. Think of Samuel with his mother Hannah, that she had to give him over to God. She let God direct his life. She wasn't in control anymore. And that didn't mean that she didn't provide for him, or she didn't care for him any longer. She still made the clothes and then took them to him at the temple each year. But it meant that Samuel was now God's, more than he was hers. Maybe it's your own life that you need to give over to God. I already said, whoever loses his life will find it. Jesus gave himself. He gave himself for our benefit, for our salvation. For you, for me. And as we remember Jesus' resurrection, we're reminded of all that he had to lose and all that he gained through offering himself to God. This morning, I want you to think about that as you think about sacrificial giving and giving yourself over to God.